Yeah, at the outset, let me first thank Andhra Pradesh Ophthalmological Society, especially the executive committee, Dr. Vishnu, Dr. Gopal Raju, and Dr. Parni Kumar. I've been a part of all the Andhra Pradesh Society conferences up till now, even though we have separated. That just goes to show that our hearts are still very close to each other, even though we have moved away from each other politically. It's a great privilege for me to be part of this symposium where Dr. Sri Ganesh is there. I consider Dr. Sri Ganesh, Dr. Rohit Shetty, Dr. Mahipal Sachdeva, Dr. Ram Murthy, and Dr. Rupal as the current doyens of current day refractive surgery. We are learning so much from them. And after that extensive, very advanced talk by Dr. Madhuri, I think I'm going back to the basics of whether we should go for PRK or for LASIK, the big dilemma. This has been uh, thought of because of the recent lectures by Dr. Praveen Krishna and some others who have been very actively promoting very high corrections through PRK. At the end of my lecture, I don't know whether we'll decide for PRK or LASIK. It's left to each one of us to decide. The basic difference between PRK and LASIK, as most of us know, is in PRK there is a lack of stromal inclusive flap, and ablation is at a more superficial plane of stroma compared to LASIK. It's also widely believed that the superficial 100 to 120 microns of the stroma is mainly responsible for the biomechanical strength, as illustrated by Dr. Sri Ganesh just a while back. Mm, The guiding issues in decision making are, of course, the family history, anatomical considerations, the pachymetry, topography guidelines, the quantum of refractive error, presence or absence of corneal pathology or previous corneal surgery, then the most important affordability issues, and of course, corneal diameter, AC depth, and specular microscope as far as planning for ICL is concerned. The family history, why I'm talking about this in a little more detail is I've been telling at almost every workshop up till now. I had a doctor who had come to me, whom I was following for quite a long time. He came for LASIK and his topography was absolutely normal. I planned for a femto LASIK, but when on the day of the surgery, when he came, I just noticed his sister sitting outside, and she was a clear-cut case of keratoconus, whom I had been following for almost 10 years. So at that point of time, I had my hesitation, and I thought if the family history is there, then should I actually plan femto or LASIK, femto LASIK or conventional LASIK? Should I not go for surface ablation? So I just, because he was a doctor, I talked to him and then I told him my concerns, and he agreed for surface ablation. So I went ahead and did. It's now about 7 years now. He's doing very well. There's no indication of any ectasia for him after surface ablation. Then pachymetry issues, thin corneas, less than 460 microns. I think all of us avoid any corneal refractive procedure. 470 to 500 microns, either PRK, LASIK or femto-LASIK, based on the amount of myopia. If it is a very small, probably you can think of a femto-LASIK. I also base my decision regarding femto-LASIK on the flexibility in the thickness of the flap which we can create as compared to any microkeratome flap, which is this femto-LASIK flaps being more stable. I would probably prefer something like 2 diopter. If the pachymetry is only around 490, I would probably prefer a femto-LASIK flap. More than 500, of course, any of the procedures. The basic Muller-Lens formula, I think all of you know, which gives you an approximate idea of how much you are going to ablate. Topography guidelines, I think we have had extensive discussion on this. In normal cases, procedure of choice of the operating surgeon, that is what decides the procedure. Look always for red flags on topo images in suspect cases. Don't just depend on the summary of indices, like I just mentioned earlier, go into the detailed analysis of indices specific to your machine. Steep K, more than 47 to 48 diopters, I always prefer a surface or a femto procedure if all other indices are normal. Aim for a post-treatment K of not less than 34 diopters or not more than 48 diopters. When in doubt, it's always advisable to wait for a period before going ahead with the surgery and repeat the topo at that time. Why the hesitancy for PRK? As all of you know, it's the high levels of initial severe discomfort which the patient experiences immediately post-operatively, and the extended periods of medication as compared to LASIK, femto, or SMILE, the delayed visual recovery. Most of the patients are unhappy in the initial first week to 1 month. Increased risk of infection, haze and regression, and likely flare-up of old corneal viral lesions. Now, why is it that we hesitate? The biggest two things which we are worried, whether it's LASIK or surface, is the appearance of haze and the possibility of ectasia. So in LASIK, the risk of ectasia is more as compared to surface, and in PRK or surface ablation, the haze is the factor which all of us are worried about. What is haze? Haze is subepithelial scarring of the cornea post surface treatments. It is thought that it is because of migration of activated fibroblasts through, like what Dr. Sri Ganesh was saying, through the disrupted movements, which probably could be the primary pathology in all these cases, into normal structures and formation of an extracellular matrix which contains mostly of type 3 and type 7 collagen and keratin sulfate. Less than 3D correction, it was shown that there is almost no scar, whereas more than 6 diopters of correction through surface ablation has as much as 17% chance of scarring. It slowly disappears over a period of time, and higher corrections, smaller optical zones, lack of stromal hydration during the surgery, and few drugs may all influence the formation of haze. The positives of PRK are, obviously there is no flap, so no flap related complications. Easy to perform even in anatomically challenging situations like very narrow palpebral fissures, very deep set eyes, and patients with severe intermittent blepharospasm. Procedure of choice for persons intending to get into contact sports or armed forces. You don't even have any kind of scar post-surgery. Post-corneal surgery patients, of course, and those needing enhancement, this is probably the procedure of choice. Even SMILE, I think post-SMILE, probably the procedure of choice would be a surface ablation. The big plus of PRK is the percentage of tissue altered. I think this of late is something which has been talked about quite a lot. It is the flap thickness plus the amount of ablation in a ratio to the original pachymetry. It should be less than, ideally, less than 40%. Current studies show safe range of PTA probably can be a little stretched in surface ablation as well as in SMILE, because they have done some studies in patients who were subjected to this, and post-operatively they have found that the PTA was over 45 to 50% also in some cases, and still they did not develop ectasia. Whereas if the patients had undergone LASIK, conventional LASIK, probably they would have ended up in ectasia. So the best option for all cases with abnormal topo, thin pachy, and maybe even form fruste, especially if combining with a collagen cross-linking. My guidelines, counseling plays probably an extremely important role to understand the patient's compliance and tolerability. All my surface ablation cases, I make it a point to tell them much beforehand that they would probably curse me and even feel like hitting me at the discomfort which I have given them in the initial first 24 hours. When you tell so emphatically, After we started doing this, none of the patients complain that their eyes are swollen, they're watering, they're severe pain. They come back very quietly the next day. So I think counseling plays a very, very important role whenever you are attempting a surface ablation, to reassure the patient that pain is a part of the treatment in the initial 24 to 48 hours. Less than 6 diopters error, my preference is always surface treatment. I would still like to disagree with Praveen and all, unless some reasonable, strong evidence is shown to me in what way surface treatment can be suggested for patients more than 6 diopters of error, where and how to prevent the haze in such patients. Some strong evidence is still lacking. And more than 6 diopter choice, the choice can be any procedure between LASIK, femtolasic or smile. Pure cylinders, again, I prefer surface. Many of them might disagree with me as far as the regression is concerned in pure cylinders. But I think the current day machines are well equipped to handle this, and we don't need to take any special precautions in trying to treat special pure cylinders through surface ablation. Hyperopes, I always prefer flap procedures. Always try to strike a balance between packet topo parameters and the affordability. I don't promote femtolasic or smile just because we have got it. I need to justify my suggestion, and only if the patient prefers, after thoroughly explaining the plus and minuses of all, you need to tell that most of the cases at the end of probably a reasonable amount of time, the vision you get is the same in almost all the procedures, with probably something like the latest smile machine. Probably you can promote it saying that the clarity of vision and the contrast sensitivity will be much better. But otherwise, as of now, what we have, I don't think I'm justified in promoting just because I have the machine. Only if the patient is willing and is able to afford, I promote these procedures. Never try to oversell any particular procedures. Always give the patient the luxury of an informed and unbiased opinion. Explain the pros and cons of each procedure. An uneventful, mutually satisfying result should be the goal of all of us. Whether it's smile, surface ablation, or femtolasic, I think this should be the ultimate goal, and we drive our efforts towards that. In conclusion, all patients with family history of keratoconus with thin corneas, errors less than 6 diopters, suspect topographical indices, history of prior corneal surgery, narrow palpebral fissure, and pure high cylinders, my preferred procedure is a surface ablation. Good Pachy 500 microns and above, normal topo, good globe exposure, not willing to experience pain, relatively less time for post-op follow-up, like people coming from abroad, LASIK or femtolasic depending on affordability. Unsuitable patients for laser corneal surgery, ICL if ACD permits, and clear lens extraction is probably another option which probably would come up in the future. Thank you all for a patient hearing.
That's a wonderful presentation, sir. You made everything clear. Anybody has any doubt? Okay, you can ask. Welcome.
Good evening, sir. Nandakishore, sir. It was a beautiful presentation.
Thank you.
Would like to ask you, what are the measures you take in case of post-PRK patients for reduction of pain? Apart from the counseling, as you said, good counseling is always a basic thing for the counseling the patient for reduction of the pain. So anything else you give for the post-operative medications? Do you make any change?
No, the only medication in our center which we are doing is probably we are giving them, instead of paracetamol tablets, we are giving them tablets of Ultracet. Other than that, we are not doing anything specific. I am yet to try out what Dr. Rohit Shetty does, that is contact lens soaked in Acuvale.
Yeah.
But I am of the firm belief that it probably helps in the initial few hours. but how do you continue to put these Acuvale drops and whether it really helps? Most of my patients, at least, are at our center. We are more than 20 doctors operating at our center, and most of us don't take any extra precautions. I think we all depend on counseling, and fortunately for us, none of the patients had any serious complaints. We remove the contact lens on the 5th day after ensuring that the epithelium is well healed, and most of them have done very well. The only dissatisfaction as compared to LASIK or femtolasic, which or SMILE, which I see is the slow recovery of perfect vision.
Yeah.
That has been the
In PRK, most of the patients expect that perfect good quality of vision in the next day itself, but we counsel it for at least, it takes at least for 3 to 4 weeks for the
yeah,
visual
we counsel
recovery.
them, but some of them, even at the end of 1 month, though they are reading 6x6, some of them I feel are not really that happy. So
Yeah.
that's the only point. I would like Dr. Sri Ganesh's views on probably why this happens in some cases. Maybe we need to look at something which we are missing.
Basically, there are a few issues with PRK. See, PRK was the first procedure which came out, and it was done by Margaret MacDonald in the 90s, early 90s. But then again, the reason why PRK has come back again is because of post-LASIK ectasia. That was the sole reason why PRK has re-emerged as an alternative. I personally do not like PRK that much because for various reasons. For low myopia, very low powers, the predictability is not as good because of the epithelial healing. And epithelial healing can vary from patient to patient. So if you want to be within 0.25 diopters, then with PRK, it is very difficult to kind of get that kind of accuracy. The second is it is uncomfortable. See, with most refractive procedures, in 3 months, you can reach the same goal, but it is not the destination. It's the journey also, which is important. That's why people buy Mercedes and those cars. Otherwise, everybody would be going by Ambassador. So it is the journey also, which has to be very comfortable. And with PRK, basically, the discomfort is quite a bit. See, what are patients apprehensive about with refractive surgery? There are two main apprehensions. One is pain. The second is loss of vision. Why people do not opt for refractive surgery, why they continue to wear glasses or contact lenses, this is the reason. We did an analysis. One is the fear of pain. Oh, it's a painful procedure. Second is whether I will lose my vision. So these are the two biggest fears. So if it is a painful procedure, then again, patients are hesitant. And if you are a high volume refractive surgeon, you are doing like 10 patients, just imagine next day in your OPD, you have 10 patients sitting watering with swollen eyes, and the other patients who are coming in to get it done, they will run away. So this is.
Thank you, Mundu.
Sir, do you give any other medications apart from the lubrication and the antibiotics in the post-operative period for the post-PRK patients for the faster epithelial healing?
No, I don't think we need to give anything extra. The only precaution I think is long-term steroids, at least for 3 to 4 months, in reducing doses.
So that you give after the removal of BCL only, sir, right?
No, we continue to use steroids right from the first day, and we have not found any problem with that. The only precaution we take is probably we try to use the antibiotics in a little higher dose. The second thing, what Dr. Sri Ganesh was telling about lower corrections, probably it's a good idea because, you know, most of us are now used to trans PRK where the machine itself is removing the epithelium at a predetermined level. And probably the two ways to counteract this is either do an anterior segment OCT and then see what the epithelial thickness is and remove that much amount of ablate that much amount of epithelium, or the other option is to use an alcohol which we used to do conventionally and then go in. Probably in such cases you tend to get a better result in lower myopes.
Yeah, we do regularly with the alcohol itself, sir. The pain scores are very less.
No,
we
but
regularly
the
do with
problem,
that.
but the problem with what we found in our experience is that when we are using alcohol, the pain factor is much higher. The healing is a little slower. We used to keep the contact lens for 7 days. Then now we remove at the end of 4 or 5 days latest.
No, sir, the
And
pain
then
scales are like, we actually give the, actually what Dr. Rohit sir follows, the BCL soaked in the NSAID is that is like
Yeah.
ketorolac solution, and the alcohol epithelectomy we do. The pain rates are very low, but we do start steroids after the removal of BCL sometimes. Sir, is there any difference in the rate of pain with trans PRK and the other technique, like the mechanical debridement or the epithelial, the alcohol epithelectomy?
See, we did a study, if I can just comment, we did a study between both. We have trans-PRK also. We have 3 machines, Schwinn machines that do trans-PRK. We did a study between trans-PRK and epithelial removal. And we found that the epithelial healing is slightly more delayed in the alcohol group compared to trans-PRK, and even the pain scores were slightly higher. The reason being, with alcohol, basically you remove a larger diameter of the epithelium. With trans-PRK, it just removes the epithelium as per the zone which you have used for the ablation. And this could probably be the reason. So when you're doing alcohol removal, if you have a smaller well, so say you're using a 6 millimeter optical zone, then you just remove 6.5 of the epithelium. And that is including the transition zone, calculate the transition zone and just remove that much of epithelium.
Okay.
You will find it is better. Regarding contact lenses soaked in NSAID, it is a double-edged sword. The pain may be less, but epithelial healing, NSAID,
Delayed.
they delay epithelial healing, and then your epithelial healing takes longer. Epithelial healing can be irregular. See, otherwise you can even give topical anesthesia drops, right? If the patient is, you can give him a bottle of Paracaine and he will keep using it, but you don't do that because the epithelium healing is delayed. You can have a higher risk of infections. The corneal sensitivity has to be restored. So this is one thing. Of course, what I found was diclofenac is very good. Now you don't get diclofenac drops, but when we used to get diclofenac drops, just a couple of drops before doing the procedure, either LASIK or PRK, will make it very comfortable. But now it is not available. In UK, it is available preservative-free drops, diclofenac, and those surgeons use it. But AccuVeil also works. We use AccuVeil for PRK.
Yeah, even we use
just
that
put
a
it in a
regular.
pre-op. We tried the contact lens soaking, but then deferred it because the epithelial healing gets delayed. And that is something that we don't want.
Sir, on which post-op day do you prefer to remove the BCL, sir?
We remove it usually on the 3rd day, because what we do is we don't remove a lot of epithelium. We remove epithelium even with the alcohol. See, trans-PRK is good, but trans-PRK also has some issues, because if you do trans-PRK for a low refractive error, then the optical zone actually comes down. So if you're doing trans-PRK for a low refractive error, you have to increase the optical zone to almost 7 millimeter. Otherwise, you get smaller optical zone. The spherical aberration actually increases. So these are some things that you should know. And while removing and with trans-PRK, what happens is you are not exactly able to measure the epithelium. And after you put the topical, and even if you have measured it with OCT, intraop, because of drying, or you have put anesthetic drops, there can be swelling of the epithelium. So there are a lot of variations. And epithelium also hydrates. It can contain more water. So the amount of laser required to remove it can be more. And sometimes with trans-PRK, you get some amount of peripheral haze, which you don't get with alcohol removal. So these are, both pros and cons are there. But what we do is now we use alcohol removal, but we restrict the amount of epithelial we remove. So we just remove less than 7 millimeter of epithelium. And with that, basically, we find that the healing is faster.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.